Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to the Black News Network, the real voice of Black USA. Today, our discussion is about death, grief, and the afterlife. There are 4 types of burials that we know about that we are going to discuss today, as well as an additional way, which is cremation. We have to make these choices ahead of time, because making these choices after a person crosses over leaves us in a position where we're not too sure of what that person may want. This is the Black News Network, and if you're interested in discussing these topics that we're going to go over today, please give us a call at 210-241-5493. That is 210-241-5493. Again, this is the Black News Network. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and definitely subscribe to us on YouTube. We are the premier Black News Network channel, bringing you the news from a Black perspective. We don't own the rights to the music, but we do own the right to what we say. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to some and present to others our co-host, Mr. Claude Fauster from Houston, Texas.
Good afternoon, my brother. How's everything going this
Good.
Sunday before the winter storm? What's the name of this winter storm?
Huh?
What's the name of this winter storm that's about to hit us?
I ain't tracking that storm yet.
You're not tracking that storm. We got enough storms in our life.
For me anyway.
That's one of the storms we're talking about today on today's show, the death storm. Yeah. So I look forward to the discussion. I've invited a couple of people on. So if they call in, you're going to have to patch them in.
I sure will. Got you.
Get a hold of another person, a good friend of mine, Linda Skurlock. She's an educator. But I think these are 2 people that can add some value to the show, to this discussion. Great. So I'll turn it back over to you, let you go ahead and do the introductions while I get her on the phone.
All right. Sounds like a plan to me.
Okay.
You know, this is something that we have to deal with, whether we want to or not. I mean, it is something that happens all too often. We see our people out here scrambling to get things together to get our loved ones in turn, and it sometimes presents a significant burden on the family. So it's so easy to go in front of all these things that we have to deal with in life and make sure that we have them covered when that dreaded day comes. And it always comes. It's going to come. I mean, no matter what we do in life, we're going to meet our maker sooner or later. That's inevitable. That is our destiny, and we have a responsibility to prepare ourselves for it. And if we don't prepare ourselves for it, we end up leaving the responsibility to someone else. And that is where the problem lies. We don't know what's expected. Nobody knows what I want for my burial unless I communicate that to them. Nobody knows what you want for your burial unless you communicate it to them. And so many times I hear our brothers and sisters go around and say, man, I don't care, bury me in a cardboard box. You know, and that's so rudimental. That's so dismissal. That's so non-attentive to the needs of our people. We have to pay attention to these particular needs. I would hate for somebody to bury me in a pink coffin, you know, but that could possibly happen depending on who's making the plans. So you'd have to make those arrangements yourself if you intend to go to the other side in a beautiful manner that is of your wishes. So like I said in the beginning, there are 4 types of burials that I want to discuss, and I'm going to put the names out ahead of time, and then as we move along, we'll discuss those types as well as cremations. On ground or in ground burial, which is one of the very first options that we always consider and we always use. The other is private public mausoleums. That's an option that most our people don't really consider, but it's available to us. Depending on where you live, for instance, if you live in lower below sea level areas, then you do consider mausoleums for your burial slots.
Kind of like in New Orleans, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like New Orleans, everything's above ground in mausoleums.
The water table, yeah.
Then you have in really dry climates or upstate climates, it don't necessarily have to be dry climate, but in other climates, you have what they call lawn crypts. If you remember the movie Tales of the Crypts, they're talking about underground caverns where coffins are kept. So if you can definitely do something like that for your family or your clan or whatever you want to call it, because we do have crypts for our people too. That's for everybody, but you have to pay. That's the key. And the last one is a green burial. A green burial is where everything that's involved in your preparation, planning, and internment is biodegradable. So everything you put into your final resting place will eventually turn into the soil surrounding it. That includes whatever the tank, the vault, whatever you want to use, if you decide to go with a green burial. Those are the four types. And then on top of that, then you have cremation, and they're all surrounding funds. And it depends on the availability of funds that you may have. And sometimes we don't have a lot of funds to dedicate to burial. But if you notice, the cemetery business, the funeral home business is a billion-dollar business, especially in Black communities. And funeral home directors are no different than Walmart CEOs and how they plan the price structures on the items that they sell. Go ahead.
But I back to our people and in why this subject is so important, right? Mm-hmm. You've heard this. You probably heard this when you was growing up. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. Mm-hmm. If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Mm-hmm. So part of our cultural framework is void of any kind of planning. It's focused on prayer. And prayer is good, but prayer, how do you say faith without works? You got to have the works part. And the works part is the planning. Yeah. It's what this show is talking about.
Right.
So but even it goes back further than even that, man. It goes back to, we talk about part of the planning process is having the funds to bury.
Mm-hmm. The funds, yeah.
And the lack of access because of racial stereotypes and racism in this early part of the 19th century, that insurance companies would not insure us. And if they did, the policies were $5,000, $10,000 that you paid on your whole life that really wasn't worth the amount you put in at the end of your life.
Right.
And you got to remember, back when you and I was growing up, and if for a minute of the people on this call, Black folks were dying in their 40s and 50s. We considered that old age. Mm-hmm. And so this whole notion that Black people's habits and traits are the reasons why insurance companies didn't want to insure us or insured us as a risk, high risk, charge us exorbitant fees. And then we wonder why we're in the dilemma of why we have lack of planning, because a lot of people got their planning through their insurance, through their agents, through their relationships with their agents and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying that the Black community as a whole, regardless of our status, because we're the only people that was defined as a problem, the Negro problem. You ain't heard that of no other race.
That's right.
Ain't no Jewish problem. Ain't no Asian problem. Ain't no Italian problem. Only the Negro problem.
I was going through the book, the 1619 Project yesterday, and I ran across a segment where it said that black people are prone to repeat these cycles all the time because nobody wants to pay attention to the base of our issues.
No, we're not looked at holistically, my brother. We're not looked at if it ain't something voting rights or something that's kind of germane to more than just us. We don't deal with it.
Yeah, well, we
This
ignore
is truly a black issue.
mm-hmm.
It's
this
truly
this burial thing,
right.
and it doesn't stop our own people from taking advantage of our folks when we die, because I know you remember. I don't know if you remember, but I do. When the funeral home or the church, the funeral home were the ones who'd come around every month and get a dime or 15 cents from our families for our burial. And the only thing that covered is them picking us up and doing the embalming. And I don't know if it included the casket, the
I don't
ball.
remember those days now. The funeral homes will come around.
Yeah, yeah. It was the funeral home. Somebody from the funeral home would come around and get
That's
a dime.
interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Remember, they used to have this little folder on the side of the wall. Well, this is just our family. We had a folder on the side of the wall says Buy's Funeral Home or Whole Brother Funeral Home or whomever funeral home. And in it was a little ticket where you every month you'd write down what the charge was, and they'd come around and collect it. And that would be for the pick up the body. See, the people don't even want to think about those things. You have to start at the beginning. For instance, if your person died in the hospital, it's the family's responsibility to let the hospital know that this funeral home will be contacting you to pick up our relative's body or our relative's remains.
But isn't that's part of the whole insurance package, though? That's not.
But insurance ain't got nothing to do with that. The insurance don't tell the hospital what funeral home that.
No, the family tells what funeral home, but the funeral home is the one doing the burial, so that's all. That's all part of that preparation, having the proper coverage, insurance. That's not a separate.
If you got it through the funeral home.
No, if you got it through the insurance company pays whatever costs. At least that's. I mean, I just had a couple of deaths in the family. At least that's the way. That's the way it went.
You can turn over your insurance policy to the funeral home and allow them to do everything.
No. The insurance company told us what we owed, and we paid it from the insurance proceeds. So whether that was picking up the body, the whole process. I do remember the big insurance companies coming around. I guess they was part of Prudential and the insurance companies of that time period. Because those were the biggest ones with their little insurance books, and my parents would pay whatever that premium was for that week or that month, however they were. I think they was coming around like every other week, and to find out the policies wasn't but $3,000 or $5,000.
But a funeral didn't cost no more than that back then.
Yeah, I mean,
and that was premium prices back in the 70s. $3,000 funeral was an expensive funeral in the 70s.
But I'm not saying that it cost $3,000. I'm saying, and the policies could have been a lot less. You know, I just threw out that $3,000.
Seems like we're mixing apples and oranges too. And let me see if I can clarify what I mean. You got an insurance policy on us. Let's say I got a $10,000 policy on me through Prudential.
Right.
All right, that $10,000 policy and my death with Prudential means my beneficiary gets $10,000 when I die. On another note, I have a policy with my funeral home saying this is where I want to go. I want this funeral home to process my remains. So in order for you to get that, you can either do one or two things. One, you can take that insurance policy with Prudential and give it to the funeral home and say, hey, if this person passed, this you can take this policy and run and go through with it and take out what's owed for the funeral, and then remit the rest to us. But you can also pay for my funeral out of pocket, and you receive 100% of what Prudential is offering, what Prudential gives you on the settlement, or I mean the entire policy.
The check is not made out to the insurance company. I mean, to the funeral home. The check is made out to you,
to the beneficiary. Yeah, but if you choose to allow the funeral home to process it, they can. The insurance companies work hand in hand with funeral homes on policies, because a lot of times families are in so much distress that they don't want to deal with the insurance company.
Oh, we got any callers
to do that for you.
You got any callers online?
Not yet. I don't see anything coming through. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it sitting right here. So if they call, I'll be ready to answer. So,
but back to this whole planning, having a planning checklist, knowing all the documents you got to have. I mean, when I was with the NAACP,
I want to go back to that, but I want to make sure we're clear on how that works, though.
Well, I mean,
come back to it later.
Well, every part of the country is a little bit differently. Like I watch a lot of YouTube videos to learn certain things about different parts of the country, how things are done. Things are done a little bit. Black skin does not know that Black folks are treated and dealt with the same way all over the country, and we're not. And so what may be unique in Mississippi may be totally different in Texas. What may be unique in Alabama may be totally different than what's in Mississippi. Right. What the local rules are. Like you got a local funeral home. A local funeral home may sell policies directly to the family.
They do. Like right here in Texas, they do.
And so that may be allowed. And whereas in some places that is not a standard practice. So I'm just saying that's the uniqueness, and that's the locational process depending on where you grew up in this country. Because like I say, I don't never remember us paying directly to the funeral home. The funeral home billing us prior to a death.
But
for them to go and pick up a body. I don't
like the Prudential don't get into the weeds with a burial. They just deal with the beneficiary. Right. The beneficiary gets into the weeds. Yeah, but when I say the weeds,
But let me be clear. I'm just saying that I don't recall any of my relatives ever prepaying for a funeral home to come pick up a body. I don't.
I mean, how do you figure you would settle that then after death?
Because I've had some recent deaths when somebody dies. Because like when my brother died, and he died at the hospital, and the family called a local funeral home to come pick up the body, but that was also the funeral home that did the funeral. And so they took care of it. That wasn't no pre-arrangement with the funeral home to come pick up a body.
No, you don't have to. There's no requirement to have that. But it's better to already discuss those things, because you may, let's say right now, you may have a beef with, I'm going to use San Antonio, Lewis Funeral Home, or you may have a problem with going to Sutton.
Yeah, multiple funeral homes, right?
Or you might have a problem, or you may prefer Carter Taylor Williams Funeral Home, but your family don't know that you like Carter Taylor Williams, and they choose to go to Lewis Funeral Home, who's now owned by a white company, by the way.
But without any, the reason why we're doing this show is because without any kind of wills or documents or anything, people don't really know. So it's left to the most responsible person.
Yeah,
just to make the call. I did a few funerals in the last several years. Now I'm going to tell you about the first one, my grandfather. All right, so when he was 96, we went over to the funeral home with him,
and he showed us the coffin he liked. He showed us the vault he liked. He said, "This is the headstone I like," and we put all that in a contract with the funeral home while he was alive, and we paid on that at a price of, let's say, I think it was like $6,200. But that same, let me finish, that same funeral, that same service at $6,200 was good for that contract. But when he died, it was several years later, the same procedure, the same system, the same equipment would have cost him $8,000. So we got it at $6,200 when we contracted it way before while he was alive.
Right, but what I'm saying is, so he didn't have a whole life. He didn't have a policy.
Yes, he did. He still had insurance policies with the big brokers, the big insurance companies.
So you guys negotiated. So you guys make sure that
cemetery with the funeral home, because
that was so he could verbalize what he wanted, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. If nobody have any intentions on trying to make their plans before they die, then people gonna do it to the best of their ability, whatever they think you may want,
right,
or whatever they think they can afford. Or some people want to do it as cheaply as possible,
right?
But because of the insurance policy, they want to keep as much cash as possible, so they're gonna give you the cheapest shit they got in there. So,
but that goes back to what we're talking about, like lack of planning.
There's no
document. Yeah.
So, do you already know what funeral home you want to go to?
Who, me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a particular funeral home written down right now. No.
Do you want to go to the VA cemetery, or do you want to go to?
Yeah. For me, VA. Yeah.
Okay, because I've already got back to Mississippi. It's back to my home plot where the rest of my family.
I've already got the plot approved. Everything.
All right, so some people don't want to. I mean, some people don't care where you bury me, where I'm at, whatever state I'm in.
Right.
For instance, I'm near Fort Sam, and I still want to go be buried next to my family in Mississippi.
Right.
And I got that known. But if I don't make that known,
they don't
have a plot, the land, the plot where I can't get buried there.
But
so I have to make prearrangements.
But you got somebody in your will designated to carry out their wishes, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's my responsibility to be in touch with that funeral home to know that, hey, I'm paying. I want to make sure we got all these plots for me, my nephews, my sisters, my brothers, my wife. All these people got plots already paid for, so they know where to dig the hole when we die. In other words, it ain't you pick the hole after you dead. You get the hole before you die. And so you can walk out there and say, hey, I like this spot right here for me when I die. Or you can say, wherever you drop me, I'm fine.
Right.
It really don't make a difference to the dead, but it makes a difference if you're living and you set up your own stuff.
Well, that's right. I mean, and that's what the show is all about.
Do you know? You know what suit? I mean, you want to be buried in black and white. You want to be buried in blue and white, green and white, red and white. You want rings on your finger. You want gloves on your head. You want a hat on your head. What you want?
Right, and some people go with cremation. You don't have to worry about a lot of that.
Yeah, you don't. So, but otherwise, you have to pick that stuff. My mother did. I did the same thing with my mother. I set up everything while she was living at the funeral home. Now that was one process. And then I set up another process with insurance companies that pay. But so when you go to the funeral home, you pay for it in advance, and then you can't get the policy until you provide the death certificate.
Right.
When you provide the death certificate, they pay you the policy. That can be months or weeks after you've had the funeral. So you can't really depend on the policy to pay for the funeral unless you sign over the policy to the funeral home. And then they will do the process for you, and then they will provide you with the remaining funds, in excess of what the funeral costs.
I went to a funeral like that where
Yeah, but they're gonna charge you.
Yeah,
they're gonna charge you premium rates
right
at the funeral home. So you have to be aware if you got a $30,000 policy and somebody was calling. Hello, this is Warren. Can I help you? Yeah, it sure is. Let me put you on the system. We got our first caller. Go ahead. Who's calling?
My name is Linda Skurlock.
Hey Linda, nice to have you here with the Black News Network. What's your concern?
I was just told to call in from a friend Claude.
Oh, okay. He's on.
Can you hear me, Linda? Linda, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
She can hear you.
I try. Okay, good. Now, the show today is about death, grief, and the afterlife, and we're talking about the lack of planning death in the African American community. And so I thought that you and Mrs. Mansfield would be some great additions to the show in terms of sharing, your thoughts about the lack of planning in the Black community.
Right.
So have you already made your afterlife plans already?
Yes, I have a transfer on death deed. I have all my stuff in, as far as my son, I've taken care of that, including the cars. But a lot of people do a will, but with a will, you have to pay a lawyer to probate it. And that can get expensive because I went through that with my husband. Okay. He died intestate. So I had to get a lawyer to get all the stuff into my name.
Okay.
So I've made plans for my son, including my burial, my obituary. I've written my obituary.
Mm-hmm.
I've told him where I want to be, what I want. I've chosen some of the songs and the scriptures from the Bible. I've chosen those.
Okay.
What I want, where a funeral home I want to be taken to.
Yep.
So you've kind of went through the whole planning process.
I'm sorry?
You've kind of gone through the whole planning process.
Yes, because with my husband's dying intestate with no will or anything, it cost me money, over $2,000, because I had to get my home into my name and, get his names off. And the problem came with the cars. I had to go to the state and get new, what do they call it? Your titles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people understand when you die and the car is in somebody else's name, you're going to have to go to probate to get it out of that person's name.
Mm. And that requires a court date? You had to go to court to actually do it?
To get the car, to get the cars, I went to the state.
Okay.
They have something there for you to fill out. Mm-hmm. So I went to the state to do that over on Chimney Rock. And then I had to go downtown to the county clerk's office to file a transfer on death deed.
Wow. So what recommendations would you have for our listeners on how they need to prepare?
They need to prepare for the cars. Well, that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have insurance on a car that's not in your name, right? The person is dead.
Right.
So you have to do that. And I had a stepson that I had to buy out. He had a part of his father's estate. So what I did was I bought him out so that I have free and clear title to my house.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Linda, let me ask you a question, and let me just share with the audience that this is not just a regular citizen. Linda is pretty active in her community. She's an advocate. She was over a civic organization. Did you all ever have? I don't ever remember, but did you all, as part of your process, did you all ever have classes on planning for your death planning?
No.
Within the community?
Go ahead.
Did you ever host workshops or anything dealing with estate planning or dealing with afterlife? This kind of
this subject? But I'm a part of this group, the NDC something with it's out of Third Ward, but I'm on it, and they have those. That's where I went to get the transfer on death deed because I have to sign an affidavit. I did that because they had notaries there, so I got it for free.
Right.
Okay.
So, but this group, and I'll have to look it up, does have I think over at what is that library? Young Library on Griggs.
Well, we got listeners from all over.
And all of that.
Yeah, we got listeners from all over the country, so they may not be familiar with specific locations in Houston, but that's interesting because the whole nexus of the show, the reason why, and this is our second show about this, is because of the lack of planning within the African American community, historical, and there's a reason for that. Lack of access.
There's no education.
Mm-hmm. There's nobody out there telling us.
Right, nobody's telling you. And I remember going to a senior thing that's put on by Amanda Edwards, and she has people there to talk about wills and everything. And there was one woman who had a will, her husband had, but she didn't have the $3,000 to probate the will.
Mm-hmm. So when you say probate, basically when we say probate, what are we talking about? Just getting the judge to make a decision on it, to approve it?
I attended with my husband. It was during COVID, so I attended it on Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I got a lawyer. To work on that because it said he died intestate, so there was no will. So in order for me to get the house and everything into my name, I had to do that. So with the transfer on death deed, my son, I transfer when I die, all he needs is a death certificate that says I'm dead, and then everything goes to him.
And a transfer on death deed is different from the basic warranty deed that they do on properties, right?
Yeah, transfer on death deeds means you don't have to go through probate.
Okay, that's
you don't have to probate a will. I have a will, but I decided that I would have to pay the lawyer money, and I told this to a guy who is an attorney, and I said, "Well, look, lawyers said that you need a will." He said, "Yes," and I said, "But they don't know how you have to probate the will with the money, right?" And he said, "Yes, we have to make some money."
So everybody trying to get paid on somebody's death. Ain't that something?
Right. That's right. So I decided to, my son would have to come up with $2,000 or $3,000 to get a lawyer to probate the will. So by doing the transfer on death deed, you don't have to do that. I went down to the county clerk's office and I filed a transfer on death deed for $50.
Okay, but you don't really need a lawyer to do a transfer on death deed, right?
No, you don't.
Okay.
The state came out with this some years ago. It's been a while since they came out with it because a lot of people had wills and they didn't have money to hire a lawyer.
Okay, right. That's so important.
I'm sorry?
That's very important. I that's a significant piece of knowledge right there, that people can go down to the courthouse and ask to file a transfer on death deed, and it'll cost.
You get the forms and everything.
Okay, and do the forms, and it'll cost them about $50. And that way you don't have to worry about going to a probate court after the death. Okay. Now let me ask you another question, Ms. Linda. Did you already work out a plan with the cemetery or the
Yeah, I'll be buried next to my husband because I bought 2 plots. And I have everything is on the tombstone.
Okay.
Except my date of death.
Okay.
And all my son has to do when I die is get the date of death and put it on.
Okay, and that's
Well, you already got the words for the tombstone, Linda?
I'm sorry?
You already got the words for the tombstone?
Yeah, it's a big tombstone. It has Sherlock, and on one side it has my husband Samuel, and then on the other side it has my name. It has all my information, my date of birth, except for my date of death, and that's all he has to do is get the date of death put on the tombstone.
So did you pick the mortician, the church? Not what am I trying to say? The funeral home that'll do the internment.
I told my son the funeral home off of Eldridge Road. I got that in there. He knows where it is.
What about a casket, a vault, or all that kind of stuff? Did you take a look at any of that stuff?
No, I just told him I have some money for him to bury me.
Oh, okay.
And he can pick the tombstone. Really, I just want to be buried in a pine box, but they told me I couldn't do that.
No, they don't do those no more, right? All right. So
people,
go ahead.
That's a scam in itself. They tell you it's all waterproof and all that.
Yeah. You can't keep the water out.
Yeah, keep the water out for what? I'm dead.
Yeah, and they close the casket after you leave. So you don't stay around to watch that process. You don't know whether they switch out the casket or just
in there take the casket back.
Yeah.
So I told my son, you wait at that cemetery until they put my body down in there and cover me up.
That's right.
I said, don't let them put me in there sideways because they've sold some plots right next to me.
Yeah. Did you elect to have any jewelry on, or you wanted to be buried in a particular suit or something like that?
No. I just tell him, he knows my favorite color.
Okay, so, good.
Yeah. But isn't that kind of isn't that kind of an individual? I mean,
no jewelry.
The color,
they take your outfit and everything else. So don't, I don't have any jewelry worth, anything because I lost my wedding ring. So, but you take that off. Just put me on what my favorite color. Coming in, look in my closet, and find an outfit.
Do you have a designated spiritual advisor?
That's a good thing, though, to choose something to be buried in. I never thought of that fact.
Do you have a designated spiritual advisor or a pastor?
No, I don't. I don't go to church. I go to Sunday school. I go to Bible study. But I told him, you really don't have to have a minister. This is what I told him. I want people that knew me to come up and talk about what I've done. I've seen this done at a funeral. They didn't have anybody the guy was a minister, but he asked everybody to come up and say something about the deceased. And that's what I want. I told him I want my best friend, somebody from the Civic Club, somebody from the coalition, people like that who could talk about me. And that's it. They can say I've gotten the Bible verses, the New and Old Testament that they can read. As I said, I've done my obituary. It's on my computer, so he can give that to the funeral home or whatever. So I pretty well have everything worked out except maybe the clothing.
You see, that's very important. I was talking with Claude, telling him about how in Mississippi we are right there at the grave site, and we watched the casket go in, and we watched the top go on it, the vault, and we watched them start putting dirt on it. We can stay right there, but in Texas, they take us to a pavilion, and then everybody leaves. And we don't know what happens. Most people don't know what happens after that until they can come back.
That's true.
So
they can't make you leave.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I told him, you wait until they put me in the ground.
I would think that if there's injustice above ground, isn't there injustice when you go below ground?
How?
Yeah, well, the injustice below ground is people, these funeral homes.
Yeah.
Let me say this. When my husband died, I picked the casket. And I told the guy, because with my grandmother, I picked the casket. When they got ready to take my grandmother to my hometown, the casket had changed. I'm like, what? I didn't order this. Well, we didn't have another one.
Really?
So I was really angry, right? But my grandmother was being transferred from Houston to Arizona. And when I went to do the viewing, that's what they told me. And see, she was going to Arizona the next day.
So they switched it out and gave her probably a less expensive one.
Yeah, that's what happened with my husband. The guy, I picked the casket, and I told him, I don't want any mess with the caskets, right? I told him that up front. So he calls me, the casket, we don't have that one, but I got you one that's better. I told him, I don't know how much, if it's better or not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So you have to watch these funeral homes.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a better. I told him up front, I do not want any whatever with the casket, and he did it anyway. Oh, it's a better one. Yeah, I told him I don't know that.
And then they put you. They want to give you limos, police escorts.
Well, the limo,
all that stuff.
With it.
Okay.
Well, how do you address that, Brother Bay? How do you make sure that there's no injustice after that?
In what way?
Basically,
like the process?
Yeah. For people that are listening, that
what do you mean, Claude?
Well, like what you just said about the casket switch or the get exactly what you paid for, making sure that your wishes are carried out exactly as you wish.
Yeah, that's something I don't know what to do about, because as I said, the casket that I paid for could have been the one that he switched to, could have been cheaper.
Yeah. That's
so
right.
I didn't know. He was talking about some gauge, 20 gauge or whatever. Well, I didn't know.
Yeah,
and that's something
make it sound good.
People need to know. But with Walmart, you can buy your own darn casket.
That's right.
And that's one thing I need to find out about. How do you get your own casket to a funeral home for them to use?
Walmart sells caskets.
Costco.
They cannot deny you buying a casket from Walmart and taking it to their funeral home. The law says they can't.
I thought you had to be a authorized funeral home to buy a casket.
You can buy it, right? Costco sell it too. Yep. Anybody can buy a casket. They have casket storefronts.
And take it have it delivered to their funeral home. And they have to take it.
But you buy it at the funeral home, you're paying 3 times the cost.
Yeah. You don't have to buy your casket from the funeral home.
They won't. They never gonna tell you that though.
Right. Well, it's common. Well, I guess it's not common knowledge. But you can go and buy one from Walmart.
Yeah.
I know some people that did that.
It's definitely not. I thought I was pretty knowledgeable. It's definitely not common knowledge. I didn't know. I thought you had to be a licensed.
It's a casket.
Yeah.
Why else would you buy a casket except for a body?
You can buy your own casket. I know a lady that did that.
Yeah, that's been. They've been open to the public for as long as I can remember. I ain't never bought one, but I know you can go and find one. They had a store right here in San Antonio that sold caskets to people for funerals, and still they do it now. I know a couple of places you can go.
Yeah,
Costco, Sam's.
Okay.
They both sell caskets. So that's some good information, Miss Linda. Very good information. So
I want to go.
Go ahead, man.
Go to the Jewish funeral home and get a casket, because I this woman that I know was a Jew was her casket was it was painted, and it had all like her casket had like the flowers on it, one showing the roots and the other showing the other part of the plant of the flower, right? That was when I went to that Jewish funeral. But Jews usually bury the next day.
Yeah, they bury those people pretty quick.
Yeah, because they don't embalm.
Well, Linda, well, thank you for coming on, Linda. You really provided some insights that
I'm telling you, yeah,
elevates the conversation. Yeah. You got two guys on here, but you
brought
some insights and perspective that kind of, because what we're trying. This is our second week on this topic, and there isn't a lot of pre-planning within the African American community.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
I mean, you hear horror story after horror story.
So, Ms. Linda, go ahead and give us your closing comments, and I want to thank you for coming on the Black News Network. We're here every Sunday at 3:30, so you can always call in and around this time and voice your opinion on our topics. So go ahead.
My thing is my closing comment would be to prepare for your death. Right.
Okay.
Be sure you know what you're doing. There are classes. As I said, I can't remember the group that I get on every year. It's something starting with what they call it, a month of service. And I've worked with them a while, and they do have courses that you can go to. I'll have to find that information out and send it to Claude.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we appreciate your call. Bye.
Thank you, Linda.
Oh, that was some enlightening facts, that brought me some light too. I'm telling you, that's good.
Well, I keep bringing up a lot of people that die in the Black community don't have the benefit of this kind of discussion. And because I've been through enough funerals where families are arguing, they're arguing over resources that are left behind, they're arguing over money, they're arguing over where a person's going to be buried because the deceased never
didn't make any plans at all
for what will be happening when he's gone, he or she is gone. And I think if there's one point that we can bring home in this show is to make sure that people think about what's going to happen to the people that they leave behind if they don't let the people know or let a significant person know what their wishes are.
This is a big thing all over the board. Even at the funeral home, you do a contract, and your contract covers everything from the pickup all the way to the interment.
Right.
And when you go through that process, you're grieving, of course. So you're agreeing to certain things on that contract that you may or may not really want to do.
Based on the grief.
You don't want to think about it that deep when you're making the agreement. So let's say at the end of the contract, not at the end of the contract, but when you finish signing the paperwork, everything sets into motion. But that funeral home has a tendency to not always honor everything you've signed up for on that contract. So it's important that after everything is done, you take that contract and go back through it and see what you received and what you didn't receive, because they more likely they done charge you for something that you did not get. Right. And it's your responsibility to go back and collect your funds because from that funeral home, because if you don't, they ain't gonna give it to you voluntarily. If you don't ask for it, you won't get it. Sometimes you have to demand it.
So I can go down to Costco and order me a funeral, a casket.
Yes.
And legally keep it in my home.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. You definitely can. You can keep that casket wherever you want, but most people don't want a casket in their home,
But I'm not violating.
Put it in the storage unit if you want to do it.
Violating any statute or law or anything.
Without violating the statute of law, you can.
I didn't know.
I mean, the thing is, you could go and buy your own casket, right? For let's say it costs you $1,500 at Costco, or you can go to the funeral home and buy the exact same casket that they got from Costco for $37.99, the same one, but you paid an additional $2,000 based on where you bought it from. That's all. So you buy it or they buy it, they sell it. That's all it is. And if you buy it from Costco, you save so much money, it's unbelievable.
I thought funeral homes bought caskets from wholesalers, like casket manufacturers.
They had us bamboozled. I mean, many of us are still bamboozled because they think it's an exclusive right to do all this funeral stuff in-house. And you can even buy insurance at the funeral home. They do insurance policies at the funeral home. Normally they have an insurance broker on staff that will write you a policy, basically to cover all the things we've discussed about the pickup from wherever you pass over at, to the embalming, to the wake, to the delivery to the wake, to the delivery to the funeral, to the delivery to the cemetery. And then the opening, the plot, closing the plot, you have to pay for opening, you have to pay for closing. That and all these little details cost money. And your headstone is a big deal because they'll charge you anywhere from, I mean, a flat headstone is about $1,500, and that's ridiculous. But that's what they charge. And most cemeteries will not allow you. Now, this is where it gets technical. Most cemeteries won't allow you to get your own headstone. You have to get it from them because they want to keep. They say they got to have the same type headstones in a particular cemetery. Like some cemeteries, you see all flat headstones. Some cemeteries you can see raised headstones that only go so high. Some you can see unlimited. You see every type. But every cemetery owner has the right to say what you can put out there.
But this sounds like would be a great for a nonprofit
to be estate planning.
There's estate planning, and there's estate planning, and then there's estate planning. I'm saying to talk about it from the perspective that we're talking. We're talking about it from.
There's an additional thing that I wanted to talk about on the types of burials from cremation, which I say can run you as little as $1,500 or less.
Before you go there, I had never heard of the green burial. Is that new?
Yeah, that's new. Where everything, but it's more expensive. Because everything you're getting is gonna be biodegradable. You have green cemeteries now. Everything's biodegradable, where it converts right back to the soil. Lawn, when you don't go with the crypt, it's anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 if you're doing an individual crypt or a family crypt. The mausoleum can be 3 to 5 for an individual, or 25,000 or more for a family. An individual burial on average gonna cost you $7,000. But nowadays, if you get one for $7,000, you're doing damn good. Because you're gonna be right at 10 on average, depending on the cemetery, depending on how the people are. But I've seen some funeral homes will do as much as $5,500. It depends on where you are, huh?
On the low side.
Yeah, but you still get quality service. But that's just part of the cost. Let's go back to the preparation before before you die. I mean, you have to put your paperwork in order, like Miss Linda was saying. And
you gotta have a will.
Yeah, right? Well, let me say what I was gonna say. It's something you can do in addition to a will, and it's a personal property trust. You have to get you a land trust. You have to do a personal property trust, and then you do a second personal property trust. There's so many little bitty things you have to do to fix your system. Let's say you got different assets. You got houses in different states. You got real estate in different places. You got money in different banks. If you don't do this, you're going to have to go through the probate with the will. So if you do a personal property trust, this is like what she said. She called it a transfer of death deed. A personal property trust is the same thing. You do one for your money, and you do one for your real estate, your property. And then what you do once you establish the personal property trust and the land trust, you have to do a living trust beneficiary. And the living trust beneficiary is you. That way you basically you give it to not you, but the person you want to have it. So you have to set all this up before you die. And if you don't, you end up losing going to court, because most people don't want to spend the time to go to court to argue about your stuff. You have to get these things done. And it all requires a lawyer. And there's a difference between a lawyer and an attorney. And I can't explain that right now, but there's a difference. But like Ms. was saying, you must have that transfer of death deed on file down at the courthouse. And there's so many people losing their properties right now. Black people for sure. Even from the time we became released from slavery till now, we've been taken advantage of on every level.
Can I tell you what the difference between an attorney and a lawyer is?
What?
And a lawyer has to pass the bar.
Uh-huh.
That's why when you go to court, the only attorneys can go past that bar that's in front of the court.
Really?
That's called the bar. So you have to be an attorney to go past that. You have to be a lawyer to go past that bar. That's why it's called a bar.
Okay.
But an attorney can provide advice to family members and stuff like that, but they just can't practice at the bar. They can't go before a court, because in order to go before a court, you got to go behind the bar.
Okay, so that's the lawyer that can go past the bar.
In order to be called a lawyer, you have to be able to pass. You have to have passed the bar, because you cannot go in the court. You see, you've been in a courtroom.
Yeah.
That bar that they lift up, that you go in front of where the lawyers sit and stuff. Everybody back there, except for the court employees, have passed the bar.
All right, so that's
the lawyers for the defense. The lawyers
and the attorney got to stay behind on the other side
if they haven't passed the bar.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense to me. I didn't know.
So you can have an attorney in the family, but that doesn't mean that an attorney can practice law
beyond the bar.
Beyond the bar.
Okay. All right. So the major things that we picked up today is that the transfer of death deed. That is so important. The transfer of death deed.
How did you all determine, like when your grandfather died or your father? How did you determine his access? How did you know where everything was located? How did you know his bank accounts and debts and all? Who had put that together for the family?
Well, you really don't know. The only thing you're going to know is what they present to you, because if you don't go out and find it, the bank damn sure ain't going to tell you that they got an account there. And once the bank find out that person is deceased, if you don't notify that bank that you're the beneficiary of that account, they're not going to tell you. They're going to eventually absorb those funds. That's how they work. I watched a show that was so hurtful, because you watched how people manipulated the Indians out of their assets based on marriage. The white people were marrying the Indians to get the access to their assets, because the government was giving the Indians their benefits, their assets, and then for oil or whatever the resource was. And then the white folks were marrying them to gain access to their oils, their finance, their everything. And they were taking it all from them over time. And it was just so sad to see how the system manipulated the other people to get a hold to their assets. And they do the same thing with us. We lose our assets because we don't know the rules. And that's why I say you cannot survive prosperously in America unless you learn the law on
And that's
how
why so
to
much,
operate within the law.
that's why so much black land in the South is lost, huh?
That's why. I mean, we own lots and lots of land and acreage, but it's all been dwindled down to nearly nothing because we have not taken the time to learn the law. And that's where our problem lies still to this day. If we don't know the rules, we can't play the game. And the game is being played on us all the damn time. You know, we got to learn how it works, and that's working for any industry, any company. You get this handbook when you go sign up to work for somebody,
Right.
and they expect you not to read it, so you don't know what the rules are. So if you read and study and learn that handbook that they give you, then you know how to function in that job. But if
Yeah.
you take it and throw it to the side and be just happy you getting the check, then they got you because you don't know what you're capable of until you know how the law works when you do things. In other words, why would I say, man, oh, I can't go to Walmart on Sundays because Walmart don't allow us in there on Sundays. If I came to you and said that to you, you would look at me like, what the hell is he talking about, right?
What the hell are you talking about? Yeah.
But haven't you heard people over time say, well, man, I know I can't do that, so I'm not even going to try.
I'm not going to try.
I call it self-defeatist. In other words, say, I know I can't buy no house, so I ain't even going to try to buy a house. But the moment you go try to buy a house, bam, you got a house. That you got it. You didn't know you could do it until you tried to do it. Nobody told you couldn't do it, but you told yourself you couldn't do it, so you never tried. And you hurt yourself by being a person that's not willing to try these things out. My credit score so bad, I know I ain't gonna get no house, or my credit score so bad, I know I can't get no car. You rather walk for another 2 years rather than go try. You don't know until you try. That's all I'm trying to say. You don't know how this process works until you try it. And if you assume all these things about death is pleasant, people will support you and help you through this process when you die, then you got it wrong. People still want your damn money. It don't matter. It doesn't matter.
And look at all those, God rest their souls, but look at all those souls that was lost in Louisiana that didn't have no insurance. They had to go on what's that fundraising website in the state and the county?
GoFundMe account.
You never know.
And then the insurance companies dropped out, said that we're not paying anyway. We denied the policy. When you know they paid their premium for the last 20 years, and now all of a sudden you don't want to honor the policy.
Well, what I've read and learned about the healthcare industry and the medical industry, I think the gap between access and equity in terms of Black life, we still got a long way to go, bro.
We got a very long way to go.
These subjects we're talking about, like I say, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take.
It's don't know. It's a wish. It's whatever happens.
That's whatever happens, happens. I'm gonna leave it in God's hands. I'm gonna let God take care of it.
And see, that's where they got us on that. Everywhere you look, you see how white people, and I don't mean to keep harping on white people, but I'm gonna just say it. Like for instance, Africa, people in Africa were doing just fine before they started exporting us for slavery, before they went in and started fighting to take over the land and bringing in what do they call it? When they go into a place, capital, They go in and they colonize. They go in and they colonize a place. What I mean, places were doing just fine before other countries started to invade countries that were indigenous and turn them into what they wanted them to be. Like we go all over the world, or the USA go all over the world fighting for democracy for other countries, right? But then when you come back to the United States, we rank dead last in equality, in treating people the way people should be treated.
Why does Russia have the least African American population in the world?
Well,
Russia.
Because there are black people over there, you know.
No, they never colonized nobody.
Right. Russia never went to Africa.
Never colonized nobody.
And it's something with everywhere they colonize, it's something with that. Russia never went to Africa.
Europe colonized, you got large populations in France, in Belgium, in Germany, in England, because they colonized.
And when you look back on everything that has happened to colonize these different places, you see that it was not done peacefully.
Well, one country in Africa just kicked France out. Macron was talking on, had a press conference talking about how ungrateful they were.
Look what happened in Vietnam. We only got to Vietnam because of what? France. Yeah. France went to Vietnam trying to colonize Vietnam. And Vietnam said, no, get out of here. You're not coming in here and colonizing us. We already colonized. And they're just a prosperous, inexpensive place. So this also, I mean, it's the whole system. Even the minimum wage has a whole lot to do with colonization. You talk about the United States got a minimum wage, right? $7.25. But if you go to Indonesia, you go to Taiwan, everybody's working. Everybody. And everybody's exporting product that they made.
Right.
But they don't have a minimum wage, but everybody's surviving. Look at India, no minimum wage.
And Vietnam, one of the cheapest and nicest and full unemployment. Ain't nobody starving in the street. Ain't no camps.
None of that. No tremendous taxation.
If France had beat them, if France and the United States had won, what do you think Vietnam would look like?
It'd be worse than we are. It'd be in bad shape. But they're in good shape now because of them standing their ground and not allowing themselves to be colonized.
And they don't owe nobody no whole lot of money or nothing.
Like Haiti. Look at what happened to Haiti, man. And Haiti just now came out of money that debt. And they paid to be left alone. They had to pay to be left alone. And they're still trying to make Haiti be subservient to other countries by not providing them the same level of support they would for anybody else. And look at New Orleans. If Germany and Sweden and these other countries had not assisted in Katrina, a lot more people would have died. They assisted Katrina before we assisted Katrina, which is the heartbreaking part of this country to me. You know, why would you not just automatically assist in Katrina?
Do you think Trump's gonna deport all the Mexicans now that they need people to rebuild California?
I think Trump
happened in New Orleans where they had to suspend deportations or suspend something to keep because they didn't have enough workers.
Trump's gonna do it. He's gonna do what he said he's gonna do. I'm thinking he's gonna start deporting people, but the problem's gonna come in with everywhere he's gonna go in with these law enforcement officers.
He's gonna start in Chicago.
It's going to be a mess. I mean, people are not going willingly. They're not gonna go willingly. Many people would rather die than be deported. And they're going to fight for it, and the police going to come in there like an armed military force to bring people out.
Because all them people in Chicago are dark-skinned people from, they're not the Mexicans,
Venezuelans.
They always come after the
Nicaraguans.
Nicaraguans. Yep. They always come after the darker skin
but
first.
And those guys have a lot more power than they think. I mean, you messing with a system that's been around for hundreds of years, and now you're trying to uproot it and change it just like that. Well, you can't just change it in a few years. That's what they're trying to do, and that's where the problem's going to start. You're trying to change something that's been done for hundreds of years. You're trying to change it in 3-4 years.
I'm wondering how they're going to find them embedded in the Black community anyway. How they going to find them?
They're not. They're gonna a lot of people are gonna go that not supposed to go either. It's just a bad situation all the way around. But it's most of us will just sit back and observe and figure out what they're doing. All right, so let me do a recap, and then you can do your closing. I'll do my recap, then yours, then we'll go out. We talked about the 4 types of burials, which is the in-ground burial, the $7,000 to $25,000, and it can go on up depending on how much money you have. We have the private or public mausoleums that you can choose to purchase, and the prices can be $3 to $5 on individual and $25 to $50 on up for groups, for families. We got lawn crypts, which is underground. Basically, you dig in a cave type with drainage systems, so the water won't get to your caskets. 25 to 50,000. Then we have green burial, which is the newest thing on the market, where you can do everything biodegradable. Prayer without works. That's what we're up against. And what Miss Linda brought to our attention is you have to go to City Hall and ask them that to the tax office and tell them you want to do a transfer of death deed. That's what you will need in order for you not to have to go to probate court. Now, just because you got a will, it doesn't matter. You'll end up in probate court anyway with the will. You must go to the city and file a transfer of death deed. Now, with that, I hope that you all learned something today. The last thing I'm going to tell you about is the trust fund, doing a trust for your business, also doing a trust for your property, and doing a trust for your bank accounts, and then transfer all that into a living trust. And then when you die, your living trust goes straight to, it's the same thing as the transfer of deed. Same thing. You can do it either way, transfer a deed or do a living trust beneficiary. Think about either one. Get it done while you're alive, because it's almost too late when you're dead. That is it for me on the Black News Network. So I wanted to hear from Mr. Claude with his closing comments, and we're going to proceed to close.
Well, again, too, I want to thank Mrs. Skerlock for coming on and sharing her thoughts in terms of planning for that after we're gone. I think the most important thing to remember is the fact that make sure you got some kind of planning checklist. Make sure that you got you got a will, you know what the person's wishes are, and there are many people in the community, attorneys, neighbors, your church, where you can go out and get the kind of information that you need so that you can ensure that when your loved one passes, it's not a catastrophe. It's already a tragedy when someone passes, especially when they pass all of a sudden. But it's even more of a tragedy when we don't have we haven't done the planning, and so that we can take care of the person's business after they're gone. So again, I want to thank everybody for listening in on this show, and we'll see you next week.